Hi, I'm Hector Garcia, CPA, and a big fan of QuickBooks. In this video, we're going to talk about custom fields inside QuickBooks Online. Now, it is important to know which version of QuickBooks Online you're in, because depending on the plan level, whether you're in Simple Start, Essentials, Plus, or Advanced, it changes the number of custom fields you can have activated. So for example, Simple Start can do up to 1, Essentials and Plus can both do 4, and Advanced can do 12. Now, it cannot just do 12. Advanced has all sorts of little things that you can change, little settings you can change. It really is the most advanced version for custom fields. I'm going to switch over to QuickBooks Online, which I happen to be on the Plus edition. That means I can create up to 4 custom fields. So to access custom fields, we're going to click on the gear menu on the top right of the screen. And then we're going to click on custom fields under the list column, custom fields. In the custom field screen, I currently don't have any active custom fields. If I happen to have some inactive ones, I would click right there where it says include inactive, and then anything else I had activated in the past and then made inactive will still show up in there. You can never really delete them, you can only make them inactive. So now let's start creating the custom fields. I'm going to click on add field, and then I get this drawer open where the first thing I do is I select the name of the custom field. So in this one, I'm going to call it marketing source. And I can explain the context in terms of why I would use this type of custom field. It's going to make a lot of sense. So we're calling it marketing source, and then data type is going to be drop down list. Now you have the option to do text on, just free text and free numbers, but I always like the drop down list because it prevents errors from people keying similar sounding or similar spelled things that are actually entirely different words. So I just prefer to do a drop down list. That way you limit the universe of options that the user has to just those. So in here, we're going to put Google Maps, local. Here, we're going to put word of mouth. We're going to add one more, and it's going to be Google Ads. Let's do a Facebook campaign. And the last one, we're going to put magazine. So let's say that these are the 5 places where we have listed our business for customers to find us in, and then we're going to track based on all the sales. Every single sale, we're going to ask our customers, hey, how did you find us? So then we can check how effective our marketing campaigns or our marketing sources are being. So this is one of the examples of things you can do with the custom fields. Then at the bottom, you have to select which transactions are going to have these. So for the time being, we're just going to be focusing on sales receipts and invoices. These are mostly for sales purposes. We could do it on estimate too, but these are the ones generally where we track the sales. Now, print on form, typically we don't want to let the customer know that they found us in one place or the other, so we wouldn't turn these on, but there's situations where the custom fields, you would turn any of these on. So definitely go check out all the different transaction types, different options you have for where you can enable a custom field. Another important note to add here is that the maximum amount of custom field options or items is 100. So you can have 100 up to for that particular custom field. So I'm going to click on save, and I have one custom field created called marketing source. And like I said, because I'm in the Plus edition, I can have up to 4. I'm going to add one more, and we're going to call this region. Okay. And again, I'm going to select the drop-down list, and I will do also sales, invoices, and estimates. And this one we're going to call it, make it really easy, north, south, east, and west. Make it very easy. So let's say, for example, you track your sales based on region. Okay, maybe you're trying to calculate commission for a sales manager or something like that. You can do that. You could also make it very clearly and just create a custom field for sales rep, for example. It's a very common one that people ask because the QuickBooks Desktop Edition had a discrete sales rep option, and this one doesn't. So this could be Mary, John, and of course, the best salesperson of all time, Hector. So we'll click on save. So I got a total of 3 custom fields that are 100% just focused on the sales transactions. So that should be good enough. Now I'm going to go and create an invoice. So I'm going to go to the new button on the top left, and then I'm going to go into invoices. And then I'm expecting to see the custom fields in here. Notice that these say hidden. So that means that once I save the invoice or I email it to my client or print it or PDF, that information is not going to show up. Let's say I do want the sales rep to show up. So I'll just kind of go back here, click on go into sales rep right here, and then click on edit. And then for this one in particular, let's say I do want to print it on the form. So you'll see that those are no longer going to say hidden, and you see a little icon there for a printer, kind of indicating that these are going to show up when you print it or PDF or email it. So let's go back and create the invoice. So we're back into the new invoice. So now let's create a couple of invoices. So we'll create an invoice here for Chris Smith. And then let's say Chris found us on Google Maps. This is the northern region, and our sales rep here is John. Okay, that's good enough. We'll pick any of the items here. And we'll put here, let's say $250. And then we'll click Save and New. So the one invoice has that custom field. Let's create another invoice. And I'm just going to create a whole bunch of invoices here, some samples. Let's say this came from word of mouth. This region is East. The sales rep is John again. And then we'll pick one of these items. And then we'll click on Save and New. And I'll just continue to create a whole bunch of invoices. Just going to watch me do work, basically. Let's do Facebook campaign. Let's do North. Let's do Mary. Save and New. Oh, I got to pick the item, of course. So let's say it's 1500. Save and New. I'll do a couple more. Let's do another customer here. Let's do Facebook campaign. Let's do South. And let's do Hector. We'll do maybe one more. Let's do one more customer here. We'll make this magazine, West, and Mary. And we'll pick any of these items here. That should be good enough. You get the point at this point. Let's save and close. So now I have a whole bunch of transactions I created with custom fields. There's multiple reports I could show to see those custom fields. For now, let's just go really simple and just do our invoice report. So let's go into standard reports. And then we're just going to type here invoice. So we'll do invoice list. Pretty simple. There's going to be the list of all my invoices. And then I can click on columns here, and I can go back, scroll down, and pick the custom fields that I have in here. So we have sales rep, we have region, and then what was the other one? The marketing source, perfect. So I'll escape that, I'll collapse, and now you'll notice that all these invoices, all the sales information contains all the custom fields. Now, if some of the transactions don't contain it, just obviously just go back into that transaction and fix it or add it. So we'll go back in here. We'll do, let's say, magazine. Let's do East, and let's do Mary. And we'll save and close. And then we'll refresh the report. And then you see that these transactions have that. So that's kind of the first thing that we do is we just run the report, and then we show the custom fields. So at least we can use that as a tracking mechanism. The second layer to this is to group them. This is probably the most common thing that we're going to do. So we'll click on group by, click on the drop-down menu, and then let's say we do it by marketing source. So to go back to the first example, and then you will notice that these will subtotal. Okay. Now, if you have way too many columns, if this is like way too much information, you can just go back into columns and then maybe remove the columns you don't need, right? So you just get rid of the columns you don't need, kind of focus on the columns that you want to be looking at. That way you don't have that much, not overwhelmed with that much information. And then we get to see the custom field. So we get to see that the first grouping, magazine here, and then we get to see the sales rep and the region for each one. And you get the subtotal of that grouping. And then you can go back and change that grouping if you want to. So if you want to group it by region, then you have your subtotal. And then if you want to group it by sales rep, then you have your subtotal. So what's also really neat is here where it says view options. You can collapse it all, and then you don't have to be seeing the details. You can just simply focus on the totals. And you can even simplify it even more by going into columns and just essentially get rid of everything. Just all these details that you might not need. So let's say I don't need transaction type or something like that, or I don't need date. Okay, I could just simplify it like this. So basically you get as little information as possible, not to overwhelm you if you go into filter. and you can go into this option up here as transaction type. I can go into, for example, this is by sales rep, and then I can click on not empty, and then basically with not empty, it excludes all the ones that are missing a rep. So it's depending on what you're trying to do. Of course, if you want to do is empty and you want to kind of focus on the ones that are missing, so then you go back and fix them, that could be an option. Or if the ones that are blank just happen to be blank and you don't want to be confused by having them on the report, just click on not empty, and then you get to see a really, really simplified sales by rep, in this case, sales by rep report. And then you come in here and you call this sales by rep. Change the date range to this year or something like that, whatever range of information you want to see. Go into save as, and then you do sales by rep this year. Boom. And then you're all set. Now let's go back into the custom field screen and do some examples with expenses. So I'm going to click here on add field, and then this one we're going to call it event name. So let's say, for example, we are tracking expenses based on which event we're in. Let's say we're in a business that does a lot of events, and we want to know when we look at our expenses based on what event we are making those expenses. So I'm going to do a drop down list, and then I'll start creating my event. So let's say we have our Summer Fest 2025, and then we have our Winter Garden 2025 or something like that. Spell this correctly. And let's say we have our Fall Over 2026. Okay, so we have different event names or whatever. And then we're going to come down here, and then we're going to track only the expense side. I could do both. I could do income and expenses. But let's say within the context of expenses, we only are going to check these options here that are the expense side. The easiest way to know the difference between the income transactions and the expense transactions is all the income transactions allow you to print on form, and then all the expense transactions do not allow you to print on form. The purchase order is kind of that middle one where it's kind of an expense transaction, but it also allows you to print on form. But these expenses, bills, checks, vendor credit, credit card credit, these are all expenditures that have nothing to do with income. That's why we're going to be focusing on that. So again, we could have a custom field that works for both, but in this specific case, we're just going to have that. Now, one thing that's really important to mention is if I go to my invoice, I'm not going to see event name on the invoice. That's on purpose. That's by design. But if I actually go create a bill, I will see the event name here in my drop-down field. So let's create a couple of, let me just collapse this, that receipt window. And let's create a couple of vendor bills here. So we'll pick a couple of things here. Let's do 1200, and then I'll pick event name, Summerfest 2025. Let's do save. We'll do save and new. Create another bill here. Pick another category here at random. And we'll pick another event. Let's do one more vendor. Pick a category here. And here we go, save. So those are bills. So I'll X out of that. Let's create some expenses. Let's go to expense. We'll pick vendor here, pick a random category. Summerfest, let's do 800. Save and new. I know it's kind of boring to watch people enter transactions on the screen, but I find it valuable that when you create the transactions on the fly while doing a video, you kind of see how it gets constructed and gets built. That really helps contextualize what this will look like when you actually create it. So just kind of wanted to show you a couple of transactions being done live here, so you see them. So I created a couple of bills, a couple of expenses. So I'm going to X out. So a report that I could use for expenses could be one of my favorite sort of reports that contain all transactions, which is a transaction detail by account. So I'm going to go here, transaction detail by account. Okay, that's going to contain, of course, a whole bunch of transactions, income and expenses. And then I can come in here under columns, and I can open up that event name Here we go, event name. Click on the little checkbox. And now if I collapse the left navigation bar, collapse the columns, my event name should be here all the way to the right. As I mentioned before, I can go to filter. I can go find event name. And then I can say not empty. That way it only shows me transactions that contain the event name information. And then I can go and group it. And then I can group this by default, it does it by account. So in this case, I'm going to look for event name. Search it here, event name. And then I could get rid of some columns if I don't want to have that much details. So we'll get rid of some columns here. That way we're just looking at a couple of things here. Okay, and then I can go into view options, as I mentioned before, collapse, and now I got my expenses by event name. Now, when you open these up, one thing that you want to be cognizant about is that this transaction by account actually contains sort of both the debits and the credits of a transaction. So one thing to do is to go into filters and then add another filter here, and we're going to do distribution account. And then in here, we'll do equals, and then we'll pick either a particular account, or we can do account type. So we can go to account type, distribution account type, which will be much easier, and just say, you know what, let's just do expenses, and let's do cost of goods sold, right? That way I specifically tell it, just kind of show me one side of the transaction. That's kind of the tricky part about that transaction detail by account. It actually contains both the debits and the credits. So you're going to see positives and negatives. It looks a little quirky. So doing that extra filter to do distribution account types by expense or cost of goods sold kind of fixes that. So you can expand any of them manually and kind of see the information that's there. If you get rid of a column that you didn't want to see, like maybe the vendor's name or something like that, we can just go back here and find vendor. Okay, turn that back on. So now I see my vendor name as well. So it's pretty cool, pretty interesting how you can do all sorts of really interesting reporting when it comes to custom fields. And one last thing I want to add is I have this spreadsheet. I'll put a link in the description to the Google Sheets where you actually can see every single report in QuickBooks. And then it tells you if the custom field is available as a column, or if it's sortable, or if you can group it by the custom field, or if it can be filtered by that custom field. So if you want to know which reports you can add it as a column, I could just filter here and just put here yes. And then only these reports that you see here on the screen are the ones in which you can add the custom field as a column. And we'll be updating this spreadsheet as we start getting more information and testing all the updates they do into QuickBooks Online. Not all the reports allow custom fields. That's a really important note. However, they're getting better and better at it. So we're going to be continuing to update this spreadsheet. So just go in the description and I'll put a link to that. It's that simple. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you in the next one.